This episode includes a reference to suicide. If you or someone you know needs support, call or text 988 for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline.
Power Rangers is all about self-esteem and confidence. And confidence is important. You guys should set goals to become someone or someone and set the goals and then become it. Because dreams, guys, I dreamed I wanted to be a Power Ranger. And now I am a Power Ranger.
Alright, this is Rangercast. I'm Tyler Rito Volto. I'm joined by Mike Manos, and we should have other hosts joining us later on. So, we got some tragic news Sunday morning, as we record this Sunday evening, about the sudden death of Jason David Frank, arguably the face of the franchise over the past nearly 30 years. Multiple media outlets confirmed his death with a statement from his manager. TMZ has sources suggesting that he died by suicide. We won't dwell on that. Instead, we're going to focus on remembering him and what he meant to his friends, his colleagues, the fans, to us, and what this means. And we don't really have a lot of structure for this. Like, the show notes that I have in front of us are basically remembrances from across Ranger Nation, actually beyond. And I have some paper notes of things that I personally, want to make sure we touch on. But I'm going to start with a tweet from Simon Bennett, who says that yesterday, Saturday, the day that Jason Frank died, was a very sad day on set. And even people, even actors now on the show who barely knew him, or who are from New Zealand, where until recently the show hadn't really aired in years, are recognizing the impact that he had. Tessa Rao on Instagram wrote, "Thinking about you a lot. You forged a path I only get to walk because of you. There's no Izzy without Tommy. There is no Power Rangers without JDF. And I'm sorry that I never got to tell you how much that and you meant to me in person." So, the rumors started to get out there late Saturday, and it came as such a shock to all of us. And Mike, I remember last night reaching out to you while you were on the road and telling you about, some of these rumors. What was going through your mind when you first actually, woke up and saw, the news this morning?
Well, I think it truly speaks for how much of an impact he had on a lot of people. When the primary reaction, emotion, whatever you call it, that dominated the online conversation was, there's no way it can be real. Or, let's wait for confirmation. People didn't want to believe it right away. And I've never seen, and we know how the internet reacts to a lot of celebrity deaths. Unfortunately, we get quite a bit of them. And I've never seen that kind of sense of disbelief or denial of reality than I have with Frank's passing. I've never seen quite to that level. Granted, that may just be the circles that we're in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was some people pointing to, like, people got a hashtag trending a few days earlier, uh, suggesting that Jimmy Fallon had died, and he is very much not dead. So it wasn't, you know, it wasn't like totally, out of the realm of possibility. But, as we learned the provenance of, like, where these suggestions started on Twitter, it started to seem more and more real. And I'm just thinking, much as we're hurting as fans, I'm thinking about the people who worked with him, uh, his family, his friends, and the people closest to him. And I just hope that they're all surrounded by love right now.
Right.
Jackie Marchand, the longtime former writer of Power Rangers, uh, from late Mighty Morphin up to Time Force, and then from Ninja Storm into RPM. She wrote on Twitter that Fighting Spirit, the episode Dino Thunder, which she wrote, was not a not so veiled metaphor about battling your inner demons. I hope Jason is at peace now. Everyone take care of yourselves and reach out to others if you need help. And I feel like more and more nowadays that people are okay talking openly about mental health issues.
Oh, definitely.
And I, like I said at the top, we're not going to get into, you know, all all of that. But if you or anybody, needs help, say something. There are resources, and you're not alone. There are people who care about you. There are people who want to help you. Um, and going like to all these conventions, I didn't really get in, his line because it was always so long. And you kind of feel like there's always the next con, or they'll be around, um, forever-ish. And also the thing about your childhood heroes, even if you intellectually know that you know they put their pants on one leg at a time, just like everyone else, you know, it's still rough, accepting their mortality.
Right.
Um, you're seeing a lot of people posting about the loss of Kevin Conroy, uh, the same way, because a lot of people, he was Batman, is Batman, will always be Batman. Um, and it's not that I'm mourning, you know, an autograph that I'll never be able to pay for, a photo that I'm never going to be able to get, but the presence that he had in the community. Um, good days, bad days. Um, that I'll miss.
Oh, 100%. I mean, you really can't find an actor who is so closely tied to the franchise. We've had a
Yeah,
lot.
and yeah, he's practically synonymous with it. Like,
For better or for
when
worse, Power
somebody,
Rangers defined
right,
his
yeah.
career.
Mm-hmm. And when somebody, the average person on the street thinks of Power Rangers, they think of him. They think of Tommy. Um,
Another reason why I feel like this is such a blow to the
mhm.
community is not only is he one of the original six, obviously, but unfortunately, we passed 21 years ago now, and a lot of people,
Yeah,
in this fandom, at least in our age, we're both in our 30s. We did not have, at least I can't speak for you, but we didn't have as much online awareness with how many of us were out there when Twee passed.
that's right.
It was something
That's
that
right.
I
There was
think a lot of us may
AFPR,
have
and that was
found
it. Yeah.
out via happenstance, maybe the Time Force episode, Circa Unsure, I think it was, where they had
That's
the
right.
placard of Twee's passing. It was
Hmm.
something that we didn't have this kind of accessibility to people's reactions and takes and tributes. So, and obviously we've had other Ranger actors pass, but I feel like a lot of them have been either delayed reactions. Grant comes to mind. How much of a delay there
Who?
was.
Who was that?
Lothar actor,
Oh yeah. Grant McFarland.
and
Yeah.
McFarlane, because there
Because we
was like
didn't
a
find out for
year
months,
of delay or something like that between his passing and people finding out.
right, and Pua, but we learned that was a much more complicated
Yeah,
situation,
there were
and
other details involved in
yeah,
that. Whereas this one seems more straightforward, I guess.
yeah, yeah.
So I feel like that's why the
Mhm.
discourse around this one has, at least part of the reason why it has such a larger impact than some of the other ones. Not just because of the not just because of how long he has been with the franchise, but also the current state that we're in. It's also kind of a perfect storm with a lot of people finding out on Twitter. I think that's where a lot of the
Right.
notifications took place. Twitter is obviously very much in the media right now for different reasons. So it kind of
Hmm.
became a perfect storm of people being aware of that. I'm fairly certain, as someone who's not on Twitter anymore, hasn't been for years, I'm fairly certain Jason David Frank was a trending topic pretty quickly last night.
It was, yeah. Hmm.
And so you have all these eyes on this subject on Twitter for the Musk stuff, and then this happens. So I feel like it kind of coalesced into not just because of his role on the show, but because of other extenuating factors. This is going to have far more eyeballs on it than anything else the franchise has seen in quite some time, good or bad.
Yeah, and you referenced Twee, and that brings up the 30th anniversary special, which was written and shot. He wasn't invited, I don't believe, and Austin St. John, whether he would have been invited or not, couldn't have come. Um, but something we know is that Charlie Kirsch will be playing Min, who will be Trini's daughter, suggesting that they might um, address Twee's death in the show. And we kind of off air uh, talking about you know the fact that this was shot already, what and can't necessarily take into account Tommy, or can't take into account Jason Frank's death. And you kind of wonder if it feels like it's the end of a chapter.
Because of the fact that the show is distributed on Netflix now, I feel like you can't really have a placard at the beginning of a single episode necessarily, because episodes are no longer tied to a certain point in time for when they were initially released, because they get released in blocks. So I feel like instead of having something at the top of an episode, like they did with Twee, and Tyler and I were
That
speaking,
was at the end of the
end
episode.
of the episode, excuse me. Tyler and
Yeah,
I were talking. We haven't had any title card uh, memoriam since Twee in the franchise.
that's right.
It's been 21 years, and obviously we've lost several cast and crew of the show. They've never referenced anyone.
Scott Page, Robert Axelrod,
Peter, Peter didn't get anything. Pua didn't get
Peter
anything.
Rutter. Yeah,
There have been several. Obviously, they're going to, especially with the 30-year anniversary, this is going to loom over the head. They're going to absolutely mention something.
yeah. I feel like there's an obligation. because without, I mean, he was Power Rangers.
Absolutely.
Um, whatever, however overexposed his character might have seemed sometimes, they were giving the people what they wanted when they called
That's
him
not the
back.
act. I mean, yes, the character was popular,
Right.
but people, you have to in this case, you have to disassociate the character from the actor. You absolutely have to.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Unless the show, because honestly, I don't think the show is going to quote unquote write Tommy out. The
Yeah.
Ninja Steel special
Yeah.
comes to mind. I forget the name of it because Ninja Steel is a blur to me.
Dimensions in
That's
Danger.
it. How many times have people over the years said, Tommy is the greatest Ranger. He's the best of us. I
Well, yeah.
and I feel like if the show were to state that Tommy had passed, I feel like that would cast a shadow over the entire franchise that they don't want, because if they're going to spend all this time building up this character as, the true Power Ranger of them all, and then he's gone, does that mean that none of the Ranger teams could possibly be as good again? That's a very sticky situation
That's right.
that I feel the
Yeah.
show is not well equipped enough to handle. No offense to the crew. So honestly, I feel like they should absolutely pay tribute to Frank at the 30-year special. At the beginning or the end, maybe some sort of sizzle reel of highlights,
Yeah.
like they did when Yost left the show. I could see them doing that, but I feel like the character should not be, um, for lack of a franker phrase, killed off. I don't think they should do that.
Well, two things. One, during the last season of ER, Michael Crichton died, and I remember the episode that aired like a couple days after. They brought Eric LaSalle into a studio to read something for like 10 seconds about Michael Crichton and what he meant because he created ER. Um, and I could see them adding something. I believe it was at the beginning of the episode, adding something to the special along those lines, filmed by Yost or somebody like that, one of the OGs, uh, at the top. I think that would be the right thing to do.
Oh yes, I would agree.
Um, and the other thing is, I'm a Doctor Who fan,
Okay.
and Elizabeth Sladen died about a decade ago. While the show wrote in the Brigadier's death after Nicholas Courtney died, the show's never actually engaged with the death of Elizabeth Sladen. Um, in universe, unless you want to talk about the canonicity of all the stuff from Doctor Who Lockdown, um, which was done during the Rona, and written by Russell T Davies. Unless you want to engage in the canonicity of that, in universe, Sarah Jane is alive, but they've had references to her here and there, but without mentioning her or anything. Um, but they haven't actually had to, you know, go back and say in the show that Sarah Jane has passed. It just kind of moved on. Um, there's an episode where they just now in the special power of the Doctor where they could have referenced Sarah Jane but did not. Um, and I think that's the kind of tack to take with Tommy is to move on.
Right.
While we're thinking about the special, let's roll the clock back to the early 90s. Doug Sloan, the former showrunner, and writer back in the day, he said yesterday we lost Jason David Frank. My first real job in the industry was as his acting coach back in 1994, which led to a long history with Rangers and with Jason. He was a sweet, loving, wonderful human being who loved his friends and family fiercely. He was a gifted artist in so many ways. He worked so hard in everything he put his mind to and his name on. We've been trying to get back in touch, but schedules were tough. I'm devastated, just leveled. Rest in peace, buddy. Love you more than words can express. And he spoke at Anime Central back in 2008 about how Power Rangers happened for him, and we do have that audio thanks to friend of the show Lee Sands. We're gonna play some of it for you now.
Well, actually, when we all tried out for Power Rangers, I got this agency, this producer or whatever. Actually, was like an agency management company. I don't want to say the name because I probably forgot it anyway. But anyway, I went in and I said, hey, I'm looking, to be an actor. And I had long hair at the time, and he's like, look, if you want to, if you want to be an actor, you got to be the boy next door. You need to cut your hair. And I was a black belt at the time, and everybody had long hair, and it was just like, we don't cut our hair. So anyway, I cut my hair really short, and I showed up at the management place, and I said, okay, man. Felt pretty funny, I cut my hair, and they're like, he's like, we can't represent you. And I was like, I just cut my hair though. I mean, you can represent me. He's like, no, we can't represent you. We were busy. They were booking some like national Coke commercial for one of their clients. They said, here, take this. This is called Phantoms, and it happened to be Power Rangers. Well, it changed the name to Power Rangers, and I thought it was like the Green Ranger. I thought it was like a Forest Ranger or something. I really didn't know what it was, because like no one knew like the Green Ranger. I wasn't into the. I didn't know, and so anyway, I went in and did my stuff and got a call back, and I went back with 7 girls for the original Yellow Ranger. There was like 7 girls and a guy. So I was sitting there and I was thinking, man, is it going to come down to like, choosing a guy or a girl? Because I'm going to have to take out some of these girls.
That's what it's going to take.
No, but I didn't really know what they were looking for, because they didn't say Green Ranger, they said Ranger. So, but it was just me at the callback. It was easy. These guys had it tough because it was thousands of people. In Hollywood, when it started, it was kind of like, everyone does everything in Hollywood. That's just the way it is. You fly planes? Yeah. You karate? Uh-huh. Yep, that's just what it is. But when these guys had thousands of people. But anyway, I was on the show, and then, stuff kind of happened, and they wanted to turn me into kind of my own show. So I started VR Troopers. Sold that kind of syndication kind of worldwide. We sold like 70 to 80% of it. Brad Hawkins, who starred on VR Troopers, was going to be the White Ranger. So when I left the show, all these kids petitioned that they wanted me to come back, they're saying they're not eating. I mean, literally. So they were like, Saban was really worried, and they're like, you got to go back to your show. I was like, oh, no, man, I just want my own show. I want to, like, be next door, not like in any other way, but I just kind of wanted to, like, I don't know, it was kind of cool. It was the same thing, but anyway, so Brad was going to be, which happened to work out, I think, for the best, because then I wanted to be in the movie, and that was like a pretty, $80 million movie, and so it happened to be that Brad was the White Ranger, I was VR Troopers, and then again we switched back. So it was just switch. It's literally just walking next door. It was like, okay, man,
Right,
VR Troopers, here's your helmet. Get my helmet. See you, bye.
So yeah, you're hearing there, he's jovial. He's just having a great time. It's all very light. That was a press conference style interview with the late Robert Axelrod, as well as Steve Cardenas, Karen Ashley. And we're also hearing a remembrance, this posted in a video from Austin St. John. And we're going to share that audio here as well.
Look, it is, it's no secret there was, there's no secret that Jason Frank and I were not beer drinking buddies, for sure. But yesterday, for those of you who may not know, Jason Frank is, he's gone. Yesterday he died. And yesterday, more important than that, a man died, a father died, a husband died, and there's no easy way to to feel those emotions. I lost my father in January, so I have some semblance of understanding for what his family must be going through right now. And I don't have a whole lot. I'm not going to go on and on. I just, I hope he rests in peace. And my prayers and my thoughts go out to his family. And once a Ranger, always a Ranger, brother. Once a Ranger, always a Ranger. Much love.
So, I mean, the clear, bearing of hatchets. They have their disagreements, but there's nothing but really, empathy and making sure his family has what they need right now.
Right.
And Ciara Hanna, who worked with him a few times over the last decade and convention circuit, all that, wrote a really heartfelt letter on Instagram. I'm going to read portions of it. She wrote, "We had this instant connection and you made me feel loved and like family without skipping a beat. I remember feeling so drawn to your daughter Jenna, like she's been my sister my whole life. Who would have known that was only the beginning of our time together? Who would have known from that moment on my life would be changed forever? You always made me feel safe. For being the eldest child, I've always felt the need to protect myself. But I'll never forget Lexington. It was late and it started to rain, but all I wanted to do was take a walk in the rain. Instead of going back to your room, you and Jason Harvey walked with me. We walked around town while Jason told us random facts about each building. It was the most fun I had in a while. While we were walking, some guy walked by and touched me inappropriately. I wanted to ignore it, but you being you wouldn't stand for a man to disrespect me like that. You and Jason followed him, and after a few words, you both made him apologize. It sounds silly, but I've never felt more protected and loved in my life." She goes on, "I'll never be the same after knowing you, just how I'll never be the same after knowing you're gone. But gone isn't really gone, is it? You'll never be gone. You made a mark in this world. What they say is true. Heroes never die. Thank you for being my hero. Thank you for loving me the way you did." It's really, really heavy stuff.
Oh yeah.
And, like we only see, the one side of these actors. It's a very like parasocial relationship. But everybody who, sharing their story seems to have nothing but wonderful things to say about him. Like back at Paramorphicon in 2018, he had to opt out of doing Shattered Grid Live. Jason Font instead read Tommy's lines last minute. So, at the time, it's like he was thinking, yeah, he's spending, like, he's not being paid to do Shattered Grid Live, whereas the autographs are yada yada yada. But it's like nobody was complaining, about paying that money. Nobody's complaining about staying out of line, because everybody who's talked about getting, that moment with him, getting that FaceTime, they talk about how gracious he was. Now he took his time to speak to every fan, or, if he had to leave to catch a flight, he'd go down the line and shake hands, sign autographs, use as many as he could, and practically miss his flight. And there are lots of people who don't do that.
This is true. I mean, as we said a couple times before, for better or worse, he is the face of the franchise. And that didn't just refer to his character. He truly valued and understood that Power Rangers is what got him where he is. And he always made sure to show that to fans.
Yeah. I mean, it's a shame, I know there's probably some suit at E1 there are probably, you know, people on the production side who now, you know, regret. I don't know why, you know, he wasn't put into the 30th. But again, it's a real missed opportunity. And also in the convention circuit, there are a couple other, you know, regulars who are outside, you know, the PR world who nevertheless ran into him at all these events. Bruce Campbell tweeted, "Wow, JDF was a backstage green room buddy at cons. We enjoyed the crappy coffee, smoking stogies out on the loading dock, and dressing up in wacky outfits. Jason's loss is another reminder to appreciate the ones you're with right now." Or James Marsters from Buffy and Runaways. "Just heard the news we lost Jason David Frank. He was a good friend and a great dude. I felt good whenever I was within 5 feet of the man. I'll miss you, bud." And you know, you have these people who you have nothing to do with the show, who, you know, who he made an impact on.
Yes. Well, he also had a wide range, even though he was defined by Power Rangers. You know, he had the MMA, and MMA is huge. He didn't have, you know, he was
Yeah.
never a name really in MMA, apart from being, hey, look, the Green Ranger's cage fighting and stuff. That's interesting. It's a novelty to an extent, but he did dip his toes in other fields. And again, despite what people may hear of, you know, how he reacts to certain people, personalities, jokes too far, to have that wide a group of colleagues showing respect this soon out the gate has to speak for something.
Yeah, yeah, and also let's, you know, remember that he also after leaving the show started Rising Sun Karate Academy, uh, training who knows how many kids. Not to mention the children inspired not just by the show but by the Karate Club videotapes to go into martial arts themselves, and that's just as much part of his legacy.
Absolutely. I mean, you can only influence so many people on television. I mean, he went out and influenced people in real life.
Yeah, yeah. And Amy Jo Johnson earlier this afternoon went on Facebook and Instagram and posted, "Jace, you were beautiful and truly unique. My life just won't be the same without your frenetic, hilarious, caring, driven, and creative ball of energy. I always love you, dear friend. Please now rest in peace." And you know, you have, like, I can't imagine what they're all going through. Johnny Young Bosch was supposed to be at Anime NYC this weekend. He dropped out after presumably after learning the news. He hasn't tweeted about it. You know how everybody grieves is their own business, and I'm just now seeing a tweet from Power Rangers official Twitter, um, saying all the Ranger Nation is deeply saddened by the loss of Jason David Frank. JDF brought countless smiles to fans over the years, and will be greatly missed. May their power protect him always.
The sigh is pretty much, that should be the title of the episode, episode 8. Because that's how everybody feels right now. There is nothing that people can say. You know, you have your JDF haters, they've come out of the woodwork and have nothing but respect because even they understand what kind of effect he had growing up. There are a few icons from the early to mid 90s that had that much of a real life impact for certain people than Power Rangers. I mean, you could argue that, you know, cartoons like Ninja Turtles were really big at the beginning of the decade. I know that started in the late 80s. And, you know, Transformers, but, you know, because they were real people, and never forget how much of a craziness they shut down LA.
Yeah, and
I think people forget just how huge, like casual fans, people, tertiary to the franchise. Power Rangers was gigantic at a certain point. I know we're not at that point now that we used to be.
yeah, shutting down the
It
freeway.
was a
Yeah.
true
Um,
phenomenon.
mhm. And here he is again, archive audio from 2008, talking about coming back to the show in Dino Thunder with some fun anecdotes about Disney.
We are also doing fight scenes, though. I mean, I'm a martial artist. Steve's a martial artist. We're constantly getting, you got to smile. I mean, it's just a kid show.
That's
you
right.
I can't look mean. I got constant. When I went to Disney, I got memos saying, "Quit saying SH." But I'm like, and they kept saying they thought I was cussing. And I'm like, that's just sorry, man. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you. I'm just key-eyeing. I'm not like saying cuss words. So they're very, gotta smile when you fight. It's like, yeah, oh, good one. And that was just hard.
Yeah.
That was kind of hard.
And we couldn't do anything like
couldn't kick in the face.
no face kicking,
and then,
anything
you
like
take
that.
70% of the good moves away. Spinning hook kicks to the shoulder. I mean, we got good shots, like we're head shots. We're like, leave it, and I can't. Like, okay. I did an episode where I did a bow staff in one of the episodes, but I did double nunchucks before, and they cut that because nunchucks are illegal and blah blah blah. So we got that a lot as well. And they're just dealing with kid shows and very cautious about what they do and what they say. But they made the Black Ranger black, so.
Right.
I'm just saying that when we first started, man,
Yellow Ranger.
we got a lot of slack.
Yeah.
We got a lot of slack from that. This is what it was, man. They're like, oh, we didn't think about that.
And we talk about Tommy, and we talk about Jason David Frank, like he was the secret sauce of the show's success, and it wasn't really planned at all. Tony Oliver has talked about going through Jew Ranger as the tapes arrived, and kind of being blindsided. Don't recall, it was 15, 16 episodes in when Dragon Ranger shows up, and he ran to Haim Saban's office, if I'm recalling this correctly, and said, "We've got a problem." They had no heads up at all, and around the time that they were casting Twee Trang, they were also in parallel casting JDF.
Right.
And how much of the success of the show is owed not just to Tommy, the character, but to Jason David Frank, the person, the actor?
I don't know how obvious it is in this recording when you're listening to this, but this entire episode, it's difficult to parse, to form into words, how much this means.
Yeah. I mean, the show is a totally different thing before Agreeing with Evil and after Agreeing with Evil.
Absolutely.
And, in the hands
Agreeing with Evil
of,
was an event for many people, children. I hesitate to say boys because, it was marketed towards that audience at that point. It was the first example.
In the hands of another,
I was trying to say it was the first example of television for a lot of people in our age group that was effectively a miniseries. Continuous plot every day. Tune in Friday to see the thrilling conclusion. We had never really experienced that before, and it was all wrapped around this character.
But in the hands of another, literally anybody else, you wonder. I guess it's it's impossible to think of anybody else as Tommy now.
Oh, of course.
But just how perfectly they nailed the casting, and they found somebody so game for both the action and the comedy.
Yes.
The same guy with that fantastic evil laugh, the same guy in Rita's Pita.
Rita's Pita is such a good episode.
I don't know why that was the one that came to mind. Just it rhymed, I guess. Um, and he was so enduring that when dinosaurs came back around in Dino Thunder, he was the first person Doug Sloan called,
And not only is he
and they
enduring,
worked
he's
it out.
endearing to the franchise. You know,
Yeah,
Jason David
yeah,
Frank was
and
a
Dino
man
Thunder,
that
like,
wore his heart on his sleeve, and it came through in the passion that he had for his work.
yeah, yeah, and it really sucks that he's not gonna be around as Power Rangers goes into its next chapter.
It does.
But
It,
more than that,
he
it sucks.
also
Yeah,
had made full intention of wanting to put the franchise behind him at Power Morphicon of this year.
right, but
So then the question becomes, and we can sit there and play devil's advocate all we want and make some hearsay. We don't know what he would have wanted.
yeah, yeah, and there were other things going on, and people say things that they take back, and people have arguments that they get over, and you will never know what would have happened, what he would have done. Um, that's the hardest thing, regrets.
Oh yeah.
And besides the 30th anniversary special, the other thing that is yet to come is Legend of the White Dragon, which, again, honesty moment. I poo-pooed that as, vanity project, et cetera, et
I
cetera.
honestly wouldn't be surprised if they
Then-
shelve it at this point.
If it's filmed, I really don't know.
It's either going to be
I really don't know.
shelved or it's going to be released really quickly.
I mean, it's supposed to come out next year. I'm not sure where it is in production, but that's gonna be a tough watch. You wonder like who. It all comes down to what Bad the Son wants, what his family wants.
Right.
Because his daughter Jenna was in that as well. Did you have any interactions with him at Power Morphicon that you'd like to share? You were a staff there.
Unfortunately, and it doesn't make for good radio, if you will. I did not. I didn't have the opportunity to. I was kind of holed up in my my panel room the entire time. I did not get a chance to work with Jason David Frank.
Yeah.
I was not one of the staff involved in making sure he got to his booth okay. I don't think I even saw the man in person the entire time, but he had his presence loomed over the entire convention.
Yeah, that corner of the con we were talking about was just constantly busy. So to sum up, he wasn't a perfect person. Who is? What he was beloved. He was an icon, an ambassador of the franchise. He loved the fans, and however transactional you thought it was, he seemed to be he was in his element when he was at these conventions, and he may not have had the kind of acting career that other Rangers have had after leaving the franchise. He was the Adam West of Power Rangers. He was the William Shatner of Power Rangers. He he was the quintessential Power Ranger. And this has probably been the most difficult day in the history of the fandom. And again, my thoughts are with his family and everyone else who is struggling to wrap their heads around this terrible, terrible loss. Mike, any final thoughts?
It, if you are a person that is truly affected by this more than you thought you would be listening to this, it's okay to be upset about it. It's okay to have those feelings. No one's going to take that away from you. I just would suggest that when the time comes after the grieving, that don't forget what he gave you and gave everybody. And use that, learn from, and to move forward.
Well said. So, love each other. Take care of each other. Remember the U.S. Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Once again, the number is 988. Rest in peace, JDF.